Okay, hey guys, I'm back. I didn't make a video last night because honestly the situation was changing every 5 minutes and I didn't know what to make a video on. But we're back today and oh my god, just absolutely crazy the changes we're seeing in the map. So, first things first, Aleppo. Yeah, lots of changes here since the last video. So, HTS and their aligned rebel groups have secured their hold on the western and southern sides of the city. However, the Syrian Democratic Forces have pretty much occupied the entirety of northeastern Aleppo and have expanded their hold all the way to the east here in previously held regime territory. And then even slightly further to the north here, we have SNA, the Syrian National Army. These are the Turkish-backed rebels who have themselves pushed extremely far into regime territory here. It has just been absolutely crazy to see. We have a total collapse of the Syrian Arab army in the Aleppo front. We're seeing reports of entire units routing and fleeing from the battlefield. Just a total breakdown in command. Just pretty much worst case scenario for the SAA and for regime forces in northern Syria. I don't think anyone expected this. This is the second largest city in Syria, and it's fallen in 3 days. This is a very interesting video. So this shows Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, troops inside of the Aleppo International Airport. This is from earlier in the day, and this is very interesting because originally when this came out, there was speculation that the SAA and the SDF had brokered some kind of truce or loose agreement where they would fight to secure eastern Aleppo against HTS and their affiliated groups. Clearly that didn't happen. There is speculation at the minute that there was some sort of under-the-table agreement between the SDF and HTS to withdraw from the airport and hand it over to HTS, because that is in fact what happened in the end. HTS fighters were pictured inside of the airport shortly after this, a few hours later, and obviously at the minute there hasn't been any fighting between the Syrian Democratic Forces and HTS that we know of in Aleppo. So very interesting moment here. I think there'll be speculation for a while about what caused this, and just in case anyone wanted proof, this is the photo that came out earlier today showing rebel forces, HTS aligned rebel forces, inside of the Aleppo International Airport following the SDF withdrawal. So again, we don't know what caused this withdrawal. I think there'll be a lot of interesting news that will come out in the future about that and what kind of agreement could have been reached between HTS and the SDF, but we'll have to wait and see. So, outside of the pandemonium taking place in Aleppo, we have the second HTS front extending down towards Hama. Now, this is crazy. If anyone remembers Prigozhin's mad dash for Moscow back in, I think, June of last year, June of 2023, this will bring up some memories for you, because look at this. It's insane. They drove down completely unopposed from all the reports we're seeing, made it to the gates of Hama. Now, it does seem that at the minute they were thrown back, and I'll go into detail about that in a second, but yeah, it's insane that they even made it this far. They've blitzed down. You know, I saw reports earlier today that Homs could potentially have fallen by the end of tonight. Now, again, we'll go into detail in a second why that hasn't happened and why it's incredibly unlikely to happen anytime soon, at least from what I'm reading, but just absolutely crazy that this could have even been a possibility. No one thought this a week ago, not even 4 days ago. If you needed any more evidence of the extent of the rout of the SAA, then look no further. Destroying their own weapon caches in the Homs countryside. Just crazy. I genuinely do think that no one expected this. I think they were taken completely by surprise here. I don't think anyone in the SAA, in the regime, in the upper leadership knew about this. It seems like they were totally unprepared. Once HTS broke through those initial defense lines, you know, the March 2020 line of contact, it just seems like they were almost totally unopposed from that point onwards. Because if you look even at the kind of combat footage we have so far, almost all of it is from the first couple of hours, first day, when they were mostly fighting in those defensive lines from the 2020 ceasefire. Past that, they've just basically driven, with no one stopping them, no one even attempting to stop them. So this tweet shows when the rebels were approaching Hama city centre. They came down from the north. Again, at this point, they were completely unopposed. You know, again, wouldn't have been a possibility a couple of days ago. Even earlier this morning, no one would have expected this. They made it to the gates of the city. If you look here, this tweet from shortly afterwards, they began entering Hamas city. Assad regime forces withdrew. To the south, we had clashes reported in Daraa, far to the south here. These seem to be totally unrelated to the rebel offensive. Well, I say unrelated, I mean unconnected. They're certainly related. These are possibly local sleeper cells or local rebel groups or tribal groups that have decided to take up arms against the regime following the rebel success in the north. A point that a lot of people have been bringing up in these last few days is that Aleppo is kind of a symbol of the regime's power. Even when Damascus was partially occupied by rebels, the regime threw everything it had at Aleppo to hold that city, the second largest city in Syria. And to see that city fall really speaks just hugely on the state of the regime and its grip on the country. We then heard that there was gunfire reported in Damascus. Now, this really did take everyone by surprise. It seemed like, at least going by reports at the time, that there was some sort of ongoing coup attempt in Damascus, potentially between rival factions within the Syrian Arab Army and their upper leadership. Now, not very much has come out about this, but it's honestly crazy. I mean, it makes sense with Assad potentially out of the country at this point, that someone may have risen to the occasion and attempted to, steer control within their grasp so that they could potentially try and save the regime, or at least some form of the regime. You can see here, though, that the regime came out pretty quickly and claimed that actually nothing happened in Damascus and everything was fake news from the rebel forces. So we really don't know. I'm currently recording this at about 12:15 on the morning of the 1st of December, so who knows, hopefully more will come out about this, and we'll find out what actually happened in Damascus. I thought this was interesting just to show the amount of equipment that has been left behind and that you can see that the rebels have got their hands on. It's just crazy. I mean, they've got everything from man-pads to ammunition, explosives from the looks of it. It's just bonkers, to be honest, that they've managed to grab all of this. So by the late evening, the situation in Hama had changed in a way that I personally didn't expect, and it seems like a lot of people didn't expect this either. It seemed earlier in the evening that it was pretty much a done deal. Hama would fall, Homs could potentially fall by the end of the night, and tomorrow we could potentially be looking at a blitzkrieg towards Damascus. Who really knew? It was really anyone's game at that point. That was the best guess we had. However, it seems like there was potentially a SAA local counterattack of some kind, and they have seemed to re-establish a number of heavy units inside of Hama. So as we can see in the video here, these are apparently Syrian Arab Army armoured forces within the northern districts of Hama. Now, from what I'm reading at the minute, Hama could be the major battle of this stage in the civil war. This could be it. This battle could make or break the regime or the rebel assault. So it could potentially be a bloodbath we have upcoming here towards Hama. It really does all hinge upon this, at least in terms of getting a short-term outcome. This could potentially drag on for years more of stalemate and bitter fighting, or this could be ended decisively in the next few weeks. Only time will tell. So, of course, we also had a statement from Bashar al-Assad. He says that Syria will continue to defend its stability and territorial integrity in the face of all terrorists and their supporters, and that it is capable, with the help of its allies and friends, of defending and eliminating them, no matter how intense their attacks are. I should note that when Assad mentioned support from friends and allies, Russian jets have bombed Aleppo for the first time since 2016 today. It appears that a large number of HTS rebel fighters were killed when they bunched together a little too close inside of the central square of Aleppo. Now, obviously I can't show photos or videos, they're very, very graphic and they can't be shown on YouTube, but it does seem like the rebels may have got a little bit too cocky when it comes to their grouping within the city, and the Russians took advantage of that. Just so that we have it on the map here, these are the locations of the Russian airstrikes today in Aleppo city. So you can see they're mostly concentrated on the western side of the city. Presumably this is where the majority of HTS fighters are located within the city. Now, this is an extremely interesting report that I've seen. This came out around 2 hours ago. I have absolutely no way to verify this, so take it with a complete grain of salt here. but the reports are apparently coming out that Jelani himself may have been targeted in a Russian airstrike in Idlib city. I can't verify it. I don't want to claim that this is true. I'm just showing it because I think it may be of interest to see. I would consider this quite unlikely, although still possible, so we'll have to wait and see. Again, I don't know. Something makes me doubt this, but we'll see. This video here purportedly shows the aftermath of a Russian airstrike in Aleppo city. So you can see it looks like a car was destroyed, some light damage to the area around. It looks like the munition used couldn't have been too large. There's not really any way to know for sure that this is the result of an airstrike, but that's what it's been reported as, so I thought I'd include it. So this is a piece of news that I found interesting enough to include. Supposedly, rebel forces have actually captured the Ministry of Defense laboratory complex east of Aleppo city. Apparently, this complex has been targeted by the IDF recently for producing chemical weapons. So, yeah, I just thought I'd include it. It's quite an interesting development. Just for context, this is the location of the laboratory. In terms of a updated map, this is about as good as you're going to get at the minute, at least at the time that I'm recording this. As you can see, we have clear rebel control all the way down to the north of Hama and up to Aleppo. Now, SDF control seems to be massively underrepresented on this map for some reason. As far as I'm aware, most of this area here is under SDF control at this point. Now, whether they're going to try and hold that long term is another question. We obviously have to factor in what Turkey's response will be to the SDF capturing more territory. Turkey, of course, is very, very opposed to Kurdish territory within Syria and close to its own borders, so maybe there will be a massive Turkish offensive against Kurdish forces. That could be coming in the near future. We'll have to see. And just a final tweet for you guys to end on. Assad regime forces are bringing in heavy weapons and armoured battalions into the city of Hama after the rebels' withdrawal from the city. A violent battle may start in the coming days that resemble the ones that happened 8 years ago. And from what we've seen and all the news that's coming out at the minute, it does seem to point that way. There may be a very, very bloody battle in Hama. Okay, I've just spent the last few minutes trying to find a safer work version of this news story that I can show you guys. This is as good as we're going to get, so I'll read it for you. Disturbing footage has come out of Syria showing the rebels there executing the Syrian armed forces members. So yeah, a video has been released showing presumably HTS rebel members murdering surrendered SAA soldiers. So obviously this is horrific. Anyone who's been following this war for a long time will immediately think back to those Nusra brutal videos that came out, 2015, 2014, that kind of period in the civil war when it was at its most brutal. So hopefully this is just an isolated incident. Obviously it's horrible, and it may indicate that despite trying to moderate their image in recent years, the core of HTS, and this is an important thing to remember, are former Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra members, okay? Jelani himself was a commander in Jabhat al-Nusra for years. Before that, he fought under Zarqawi in Iraq in the 2000s, in the precursor organization to the Islamic State. Finally, I'd like to note, I can't find an article on it at the minute, but there were reports that a plane flew from Moscow into Syria today, into Damascus specifically, and that Assad could be aboard that plane.